Danny Brown and JPEGMafia just released their newest album, Scaring the Hose, and just after Peggy announced the album with Danny Brown, I was kind of really hyped because I feel like they're two critically acclaimed artists that could work well together and mix to create some great music. But after hearing the first single, I was a little bit disappointing just because of like the mixing and just not sounding as good as I thought they could make something together. But safe to say now, after hearing the entire album, it really lives up to the expectations I had before. There's such interesting sample uses throughout the album, and Peggy and Danny Brown work together as such a good 1-2 punch on some of these songs. Overall, I feel like this album could be a little bit stronger when compared to either of their solo works, but I feel like there are a lot of great songs on this album that I love. Let's go track by track. Starting off with Lean Beef Patty, I really like the use of the sample, but the production after it starts hitting at the beginning of Peggy's verse. After that, the production is a little weird, and the transition from JPEG to Danny is a little rough, and I feel like the production doesn't really work as well with Danny, who's mixing really weirdly on that song. Step a Pig, the production is really grimy to start, but I really like it as it goes on with the 808s, giving kind of a pulsating sound. I don't really like how weirdly Danny's voice is mixed in, but I know that's kind of his style. I really like how the production sounds during Peggy's verse, and I feel like the mix on that verse works a lot better than Danny's verse. The beat like comes down and restarts, and it works really well, and I feel like especially the outro works well. Scaring the Hose, love the production on this song. I feel like the clapping in the beginning gives the song a nice rhythm, and both Danny and Peggy sound great on this song, and they just sound great mixed in. The production in the background really works and sounds super bombastic, especially during the verse where the drums and bass kick in. Garbage Pail Kids, I don't really like how Danny's voice is mixed in super weirdly below like the sample they use, which I assume represents the Garbage Pail Kids, where they just don't really fit together. The production right after Danny's verse is super good, and I really love the atmospheric sound that I hear. Peggy's voice sounds a little bit better, but I feel like the sample they use just clearly conflicts with their voice and doesn't work that well. The electric guitar part sounds actually great, though, and I feel like that kind of boosts the song just a little bit. Then we go to Fentanyl Tester. The song is a really similar sample to Lean Beef Patty, and I feel like it sounds a little worse than that one, at least in the first verse. But I feel like the production doesn't fit Danny that well at parts, but he sounds good during other parts. I really like the parts where they strip down the production to just being Danny's vocals and one instrument, as I feel like you can hear him a lot better. The Milkshake sample at the end is a little weird, though. Perfect. I really like the super grand sounding production. I feel like Danny sounds pretty solid on it, and the production during Peggy's first verse is crazy and sounds amazing. I feel like the trumpets throughout the song give it this like kingly feel, and it sounds really royal. Shut Your Bitch Ass Up, Muddy Waters. The production on the song is really weird. And even though Danny sounds weird on this one, I really like how the production perfectly fits Danny on the song. I really like how the beat slows down into Peggy's section. I feel like this section sounds great, especially when the beat begins to come in. The production sounds perfect with Peggy's vocals, and it just has such a bouncy feel to begin with, which just sounds amazing in general. Orange Juice Jones, I really like the sample on this song, and I feel like Danny sounds pretty solid on this part of the song. The production on the song really works with Danny's. I feel like it gives his voice a little bit more of a role in this song. Peggy's verse also sounds solid as well, but I feel like it's kind of a generic sound. Kingdom Hearts Key, I like the sample they use on this song. I feel like Peggy's verse could have the vocals boosted, but it still sounds solid. Danny also sounds pretty good. Nothing special, but I really like how the samples are kind of angelic, and I feel like carry the song as well. As I get transported into a dreamlike state when listening to them, I feel like Red Veil fits the song pretty solidly, especially with the yelling at the end of his bars, which is really similar to like the Peggy kind of sound. God Loves You, I really like the soul sample they use on this song, and it sounds great even with the bombastic bass and 808s in the background. Danny sounds great on the song, as I feel like his voice is a nice knife that splits through on the background noise on the song. Peggy also sounds solid on his part. I feel like nothing special, but this song is just really, really carried by that amazing soul sample. Next up, we had Run the Jewels. The sound of the song is a little bit weirder, as I feel like it has a really interesting 80s sound, but the way they mix in Danny kind of works, even though it sounds a little weird. But this song just doesn't really develop as like it's a minute long, and I don't know, it's a little weird. Then we go to Jack Harlow Combo Meal. I like the production on this song with the piano, and Danny's verse is pretty solid. I like the voice effect and the toning down of the beat during Peggy's verse, and I feel like it sounds a lot better. I also like Peggy's singing part, which I feel like works well. It's nothing amazing, though. I feel like it could have been a little bit better, but, it's fine. Heaven on Earth, I really like how Peggy sounds on this song, and I feel like the production is also solid. But Danny's part just doesn't really work with the beat at all, because the beat has these really weird hits, which the tempo hits, which he doesn't hit. But I think it's not his fault. It's just the beat just doesn't work, in my opinion. They don't really keep a rhythm. And I do like the sample when it gets into the Heaven on Earth part, as I feel like the sample they use for it is great. Last but not least, we get Where You Get Your Coke At. I like the stripped down beginning, allowing for a solid build into the song, which doesn't hit that hard as the beat doesn't fully drop. The beat doesn't really drop enough for me on this song, as I feel like it kind of just cucks the listener who wants a big drop. I do love Danny's line where he says, "Where you get your coke from?" I feel like it just sounds so good on this song. I feel like the song doesn't really work as the final song on the album, as I feel like it doesn't end the album off on a high note, but it still is a fine song, but it just doesn't work as the ending song, because I feel like it kind of just, like, it doesn't ruin the album, but I'm saying it ends the album off on a weirder note. In my opinion, this album is really solid. I mean, I feel like it really is something that, you'd see from Danny Brown and JPEGMafia, as, like, generic as that sounds, just because it is a good album from the two of them, and I feel like they both have really solid parts. As I am a JPEGMafia fan, I feel like his parts are a little bit better, and I'm not that big of a Danny Brown fan, but I still feel like Danny Brown puts in some really solid work on this album, and I feel like they both really suit each other, as they're just, like, really two artists that work in the same vein and, have that same kind of style and sound. Either way, though, this album is really solid, especially when you get to that middle part where you have Kingdom Hearts Key, you have God Loves You, and, like, Shut Your Bitch Ass Up, Muddy Waters, Perfect. Those are all really, really solid songs. Scarin' the Hose might be one of the best songs of this entire year. I just feel like it really is, one of Peggy and Danny Brown's, like, best works together. And I just feel like there are so many really, really good songs on this album. And while there are a couple that I feel like are a little bit mid to me and, really show how limited some of the stuff when they're working together is, but I don't know. I just think overall this album has way too many good songs to be not a good album. And it really could be competing for the album of the year for me. I mean, I got Slow Tie's Ugly up there, Yves Tumor's Hot Between Worlds, and probably Lil Yachty's Let's Start Here, because I feel like those are all really solid albums, but this has got to be the rap album of the year so far for me. There's nothing that's really compared to this so far, and I feel like they really put in a solid effort on this one. It's something that I really wouldn't expect from the two of them, but I just still think it is a really, really solid album, and they put in a really solid effort on this one, and just overall, it's something that has a sense of cohesion from the two of them, as just the samples and their voices and everything just kind of fits together and works together really well. So I think this definitely is one of the better albums this year, and I'm going to have to give this one an 8 out of 10. Definitely is up there. Nothing that I wouldn't expect from Peggy and Danny Brown, but it is still a great album either way, and I feel like they put a lot of good effort into this one.